Hi, it's time for me to show you one of the latest abstract strategy, fun and beautifully looking board games from Lucky Duck Games, and this is Baron Voodoo, which is a brand new game from Lucky Duck Games, as I mentioned, that packs lots of interesting components, a very different aesthetically wise theme and look to the game, and actually a game that has a lot of strategy, a lot of thinking with a very simple rule set. So what is this game about? This game is about actually trying to capture the different dice of your opponent. You can capture die with a specific way. You can also capture your own die, not only your opponents, and you're trying to capture die in order to make them combos so that you can score victory points during specific phases of the game. It has some very unique, cool ideas. It has a beautiful board, very nicely illustrated dice which you don't roll, you actually place them, so the symbol is what it matters, so there is no luck involved in terms of rolling dice and getting different results. You have to strategically think very carefully how to move and how to capture different types of symbols or colors to make combos to score victory points. The game offers special abilities because you are a Loa in the Voodoo world, so you're trying to capture spirit to bring them in the spirit world and earn victory points. Has a lot of thinking, but above all it has a very simple rule set. So join me at the table, I'll show you how the game works, and at the end of this video I'm going to wrap up my opinion and tell you what I think about the game. Let's see how we play Baron Voodoo. First of all, let's start with a setup. What we do is we take the main board, which is this one over here, and we put it in the center of the table. Each player picks a Loa. A Loa is depicted on each of the player boards on this beautiful board. From the bottom side you can see that there are two Loas, which is for team play, so make sure that when you pick up a Loa you have this facing up a single color like this one. Each player, they're going to take the Loa, put it in front of them and take one of their cubes marking their victory points and put it in the section in the slot with 0. That goes all the way up to 20. The same goes for all the 4 players sitting around the table and the main board. Each player will take their Loa, their associated protection token from the inactive side. This is again having the same color like the color of the player board, but you have to start with this side face up, so you put it like that. Then you take 3 offering tokens. Offering tokens look like that, so you start already with 3 of those. And of course you take the score token and put it on the slot 0, and you're ready to go. You roll the 48 dice and you place them freely in the slots. You can see that this is dual layer and they fit very nicely with the dice. These are wooden dice with prints on them and different symbols. So you roll them freely and you put them on the board, making sure that you match a purple die going on a purple slot, a yellow die going on a yellow slot, and you guess the rest. So other than that, you'll have one single space which is free, and this is this one in the center, and then you would be ready with all the slots filled except from the central one, which is supposed to be blank. Keep in mind that you can have advanced strategy where you have a more balanced game or a more chaotic game, which is actually one of the variants of the game. For a different game experience, it's one of the 2 variants the game offers. You can have preset the dice before, meaning select the facing of the die before starting the game. So what you see in front of you is exactly what it's included in the rulebook for a balanced game where all Loa dice are identical, so if you lose you cannot blame the dice roll. And there is another example with another depiction in the rulebook where you have the chaos mode where of course you guess it, it's more chaotic, but captured dice will move easier from Loa to Loa, and you might lose some friends this way because there's going to be a bit of fighting, I suppose, but that's part of the game as well. But this is what a balanced game would look like in terms of this variant. Of course the game suggests that you can take all the dice, throw them and freely put them just matching the color during setup. The next thing that you do is you place the remaining token, the offering tokens, nearby, so that you make a pool. I put them over here. And you do the same for the 20 victory points. If a player surpasses the slots on their personal Loa board, they have to take one of those to mark that they have 20 plus whatever thing else they can score during the game, or at the end of the game, that is as well. And you place also the Baron Voodoo token, which is this nice token that actually you can gain it within the game. And when you do so, what you do is you take your the respective token and you cover your Loa by putting it in the center, and then you have a special access to all of the Loa powers without having to pay with offering tokens. We'll explain it later on. You get this only if you have a specific prerequisite, but we're going to explain it throughout the game. So the oldest player is the first one to play, and we're ready to go. The game is very, very simple. During the game, you'll need to capture as many dice as possible in order to create combos and earn victory points. You play one after the other, players taking turns one after the other, clockwise, so until one of the victory conditions is met and the end game triggers. So the end game actually triggers, and then we count victory points to see who is the winner. Now, the play is very simple. We have 4 different steps. The first one and the fourth one are steps that you can do either the first one or the fourth one. You cannot do both. Okay, and I'm explaining right away. So the first step, step number A, at the beginning of your turn, you can use your special Loa ability. Each player has a special Loa ability which corresponds to their character, and we'll explain it later on. By using freely your Loa power. You're playing with this Loa, so you can use freely their respective ability. Just as a reminder, the abilities are depicted with icons on top of the Loa player boards that you can see here. For example, this Loa has this special ability, and it's also explained with a very nice reference at the end of the rulebook. Then you have to capture a die on the central game board. This is mandatory, you have to do it, and if a player at some point at this stage cannot capture a die, that triggers the game end until all players have the same number of turns. So you have, the second step, step number B, you have to capture a die. Step number C, once you have captured a die, you can do any of the 5 subsequent following actions, but in order. It's not mandatory, you can decide to do some of them, but you have to do them in order. So, step C has, once you capture a die, you can take one offering token from the reserve if you capture a die matching your color of your Loa. So if you're yellow, when you capture a yellow die, we'll see how capturing a die works, then you are awarded with one offering token from the reserve. Then you can spend one offering token from your personal supply. So this player's personal supply is here, so they can spend one of their offering tokens in order to change the captured die. Let's assume that they capture this one, to change the face of the captured die to what exactly they want as a different face. So you decide to place the specific face of the die as long as you want to spend one offering token from your personal reserve. Then you may apply the dice face-up effect, and we'll explain these effects later on. So you may apply this effect because you either capture it like that or you spend an offering token to specifically set it on a specific face. And then you may spend 2 additional offering tokens, 2 more, to play another turn, so have another go before the next player clockwise, but you can only do it once, so you can only play one more extra turn if you spend 2 offering tokens. Then you can earn victory points, which is an optional action, by placing dice that you capture from your capture area to your dice spirit area, which is the bottom of your Loa board. We'll explain how this works later. So this was step C. Step D, we're going to show you a practical example, so don't worry. At the end of your turn, if you did not act during step A, meaning you didn't apply your Loa power, you can apply your Loa power or spend again one offering token to apply not your own Loa power but the Loa power of one of your opponents. of your different loas. So there you have it, that's it. There are different loa powers that they are explained in the rulebook, and you can see them here. Each loa owns a specific power that allows you to move one or several dice on the game board, and you have to use them very wisely according to your strategy, either to make things easier for you or harder for your opponents. So briefly to go through the 4 special abilities of the 4 loas. The yellow player, or the yellow Mami Wata Loa, has this special ability, which means gather all the dice from one line and move them towards the edge of the game board, either this way or that way. It's up to the player's choice. Papa Legba Loa's ability, you move a single die to any empty slot on the same row of the game board, but needs to be empty. Papa's Loa's Grand Bras ability is you move all dice from a column except the one directly on the game board and place them freely on other dice on the game board. So you take it from the top of a column and you put it on any other freely space that you wish. And the fourth and last Loa's power, Erzuli Freda, I don't know how this is pronounced. Special Loa power is that you switch 2 isolated dice. We're going to explain what isolated die means on the game board because this is your power. I remind you, you can either select to do your Loa ability freely at the beginning or at the end of your turn, one or the other, or pay an offering token to use the Loa ability of another player, and that's how this works. So let's see how the dice work. During the game you need to capture the dice of the game board. In order to be captured, a die needs to be adjacent to one of your Loa's color. How does capturing a die works? It's very simple. To capture a die you need to choose a die of your color, accessible to the game board. The chosen die must be adjacent to at least one die or a column of a dice and followed with an empty space or an incomplete column so that it can jump, and we're going to demonstrate this in a bit, and then perform the jump in order to capture that die respectively. So let's see this example here. Focus on the top row, which I have constructed in order to emulate the example of the rulebook. So you can see that we have different die. This is, let's number, I'm the yellow player, yellow Loa, so let me number my die, so my dice, so that you can see what's what. Let's assume this top yellow one is number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the die number 2, which is this one, is isolated. I'm going to explain what isolated die means, and cannot jump over another die, because forget about this row and focus only on the top. Imagine these are empty, so you're not confused. Okay, like that. So the yellow die is isolated, die number 2, and cannot jump over another die, so we forget about it. The die number 3, which is this one at the bottom of the column, is not accessible because it's under other die. Actually, it's under 2 dice, both this one and that one, so you cannot use this one since it's below other dice. The die number 4, which is this one, again cannot jump over the red die because no empty space is available. You cannot go off board, and of course it cannot jump over the purple die either because the next space is a complete column. It has 3 dice. So we're going to explain columns later on. So it cannot jump over here because this column is complete. It goes all the way up to 3, and this means a complete column, and it cannot jump over complete columns. And the other die are not yellow, so a player can only play yellow die, so they cannot pick up the blue one or the red one, because he has to pick one of their own Loa color. Okay, good. So actually that leaves us with only die number 1, which is this one on top of the column. So let's see the different 2 options that the yellow Loa player has. They can move the chosen die in line by jumping over an adjacent die or a column of dice. So they can jump over and capture either the blue, like that, and they capture the blue and take it on their capture area, or they can jump over the purple, capture the purple, and take it in their capture area. Whatever they decide to do, it's up to them. Sorry, I don't remember the facing, but it has to be exactly as it was. I'm not switching the facing as I do the jump. I need to keep it as it is. Okay, so I'm not switching to another face. We said when you can switch the face of a die, you have to pay offering tokens at the next step. So whatever the player wants to do, it's up to them. There is no right or wrong move. The choice is to the player, depending on their strategy. They can either capture a die that they need in order to make a combo, we're going to explain this later on, or they can decide to capture a die just to bother an opponent and break their plans and make it difficult for them. It's up to them. The die you jumped over, let's say I jumped over the purple one, is captured and goes in your capture zone, which is the top half of your player board, as you can see here. So I just capture the purple one and I put it on my capture area, which is the top area. The bottom area is the spirit ward, the black one, so I didn't place it there, specifically place it on the capture area, which is the top one on my Loas board. A bit more about the dice. When we say a dice column, we mean, for example, like we had before, this case where we have dice stacked on each other. During the game you'll pile dice, one over the other, on the other, forming columns. A column cannot be formed with more than 3 dice, so you can never have, for example, this one, which is 4 die on top of each other. Okay, you can go only up to 3, as I indicate here. And of course, an isolated die and a die at top of a column is considered accessible. The die below cannot be picked for capturing another die, so I cannot pick this yellow or that red, if I'm the yellow or the red Loa, because it's blocked by the ones that they're sitting on top of the column. So let's see how we earn victory points during this step. So the optional step number 5, which is actually during the turn of the player within step C. Step C has all the various optional actions. So the last and 5th portion of your C step is that you can earn victory points if you wish to. This is all depicted on the back of the rulebook, so you don't have to remember anything. So the optional step 5 allows you to place the dice you want from your capture zone, which I remind you is the one on the top. So the blue player, this is their capture area and this is their spirit ward, so this is their capture area. So this step you can decide to group dice in specific types of combos so that you earn victory points. There are 2 different combos available, and this is described also on the player board that you see here. So the 2 different types of combos are either grouping dice of different color but the same icon, like this on the left case, or by grouping dice of the same color, like here, but with different icons. Victory points are awarded depending on the number that you capture. So if you capture 2 dice, you get 1 victory point. 3 dice, with 2 dice, 1 victory point. With 3 dice set, 3 victory point, and with 4 dice set, 5 victory points respectively. Okay, this is just at the end of the scoring, so you don't have to worry about it for the moment. This is a majority. So this is how capturing earning victory point works. So why won't you want to move it at the moment immediately at the spirit ward so that you earn victory points? Because, for example, this player may choose to move, for example, those 2 of the same color, so that they will earn 1 victory point when they move them to the spirit ward like that. So they may not want to do it because you can only do it during the player's turn. You can only take points from 1 combo at the end of the game, so you have to be careful. And of course, once you do, you forget about those because these dice are locked. So we've seen in the game that we have also white dice, like those, which don't belong to any Loa. So what about those? Those are a color joker, which represent any color you need in a combo. So for example, if I had those, I could move all those 3 together and assume that this is a specific purple dice. die. So I have 3 of them, so that would award me, for example, 3 victory points, and I will take my victory point tracker, 1, 2, 3, and give myself 3 victory points. The player with the most wise dice in the spirit world gets the Baron Shamedi. So again, the spirit world is the one at the bottom, so you have to already use them in order to capture them and score victory points, so they have to be here. And the player with the most victory, the white die in the spirit world, they get this Shamedi token, they place it on top of the Loa, and the benefit for that immediately and moving forward is that if you have the Baron Shamedi token, you can use any Loa spar without having to pay the cost of one offering token at steps A or D during your turn, meaning at the beginning and at the end, because you can either use a Loa on your own at the beginning or at the end if you haven't done so, or spend one offering token to use another player's. So that's how this step works. The game ends in 2 different situations, either when a player gets to a specific number of victory points depending on the number of players. As you can see, this is depicted here. So with 4 players, if someone reaches all the way up to the 12 victory points, then they trigger the end of the game. When we're playing 3 players, that goes to 15 instead of 12, and when it's 2 players, this goes at 18 victory points respectively. So this is the first option. Another way for the game to end is if a player cannot play anymore because he cannot perform any capture move action, that triggers the end of the game. And we have to play, all of the players have to play so that we get the same number of turns, and then we proceed with the final scoring. Remember, the first player who played and started playing was the oldest player. Each player has to move their dice from the capture zone to the spirit world, so if you move several combos during this step, you only score victory points for one combo, so be careful, that's why you need to score throughout the game. And you compare each player's number of dice in each color, so each time a player has more dice of a specific color, for example, I have more purple or more green than all of the other players, then I get 3 victory points. So I mark 3 victory points on this score respectively. This happens for each of the colors where we score majority. If your score exceeds 20 points, then you have to remember to get 20 victory points score marker so that you know that you have 20 plus everything else you scored above that. Then this is how you score the victory points. The player with the highest score is the winner and they become the new Loa of the dead. In case of a tie, the player who ended the game or the one closest to them clockwise wins the game. I remind you there are 2 variants. One was for the fixed board and for balanced mode and for chaotic mode, the 2 different setups with pre-constructed facing for the die. And there is another variant, a team mode variant. So if you're playing with 4 players and already know the game, it is suggested that you can also play the team mode. Then you get to use the back of this board, so the purple player plays with the blue one and they are a team respectively, and so are the other 2 Loas. So you form 2 teams of 2 players and choose the team board for each team, and players in the team needs to sit next to each other. They share the same board. The game is similar to the regular mode, except for you no longer play clockwise, but you're alternating a player on each of the team. So I would play a turn, and then my opponents would play, and then my teammate would play, and then my teammate's opponent would play. The team members share their offering tokens, 3 offering tokens at the game start for each of the team. They capture zone, the spirit world and the victory points. The protection token is personal. It protects all die of your team spirit world, but only your die on the game board, and your teammates' die on the game board are not protected. And the Baron Shamedi token is not used in this variant, but you win 3 victory points if you have the most white dice when the game ends. Speaking of protection tokens, it's something that we didn't mention, are these tokens here, that they start face down during the setup, and they are linked actually with the face of this die. Remember, when you capture a die and you take it on your spirit, your capture area, you may do this action. or you may spend an offering token to switch it and then do the chosen action. So let's see the different actions as included on the back of the rulebook. The first option is this symbol right here, which is the same like the offering token. When this symbol is captured, then you take one offering from the reserve, and the offering tokens can be used during your turn's optional actions to change the die face, or use your lower power, or play an extra turn if you have two, but you can only do it once per turn. Then we have this one, which is actually just simply earning a victory point. If you reach the score limit, you have to, with this effect, you finish your turn and then apply the game end as indicated previously. Then we have this facing, which actually you change the face of one of your die in your capture zone, including this one. Okay. Then we have this one, which is linked with the protection token. Whoop. This one. This is linked with your protection token. So you place your protection token active side face up once you use one of those. So you start like that and then you enable it when you capture one of those die, one of those symbols that is, and you use it. Your dice on the central game board cannot be captured, and your captured dice cannot be stolen by any opponent until the next turn. So for one turn you're protected, and then on your next turn you switch back your protection token with the inactive side face up, so you're no longer protected. So this lasts for only one turn. Next is this symbol with a hand picking. You steal a die from an opponent's spirit ward. I remind you, spirit ward is the one at the bottom. The stolen dice effect is not applied, and you cannot steal a die from a player with an active protection. So this can mess up a majority of colors. That's very interesting, because you have already scored for combos. And the last symbol is this one. Switch a die from an opponent with one from another opponent. Both die must be in the opponent's capture zone, and you can choose any player, including yourself, when you apply this symbol. So these are the effects as you have seen them here, and they are all included at the back of the rulebook. So you have everything you need in order to play Baron Voodoo. So let's move to my final opinion about the game. I really had a good time playing this specific game, because not only it offers a lot of replayability, a lot of thinking, but it packs everything in a very nice and good looking package. The game looks absolutely gorgeous on the table. It has a lot of color, it has clear symbols, it had a lot of good and interesting ideas, but above all, it's a very, very clever game. You have to think carefully which dice you want to capture, which combos are you going to aim for, what abilities are you going to use, either your own low ability or your different low abilities from your opponents, but you have to pay them offering tokens. And this is a very, very simple and fast game, but it offers a lot of thinking and a lot of strategizing about which choices to take, which groups of dice to use, what symbols and what abilities to enable, etc. Very, very interesting, very beautiful on the table. I like nowadays my abstract strategy games, and I think you'll agree with me, not only to play cleverly, not only to offer you a lot of thinking and a lot of cool new ideas, but also to look gorgeous. And I think this specific one, Baron Voodoo, does this. This checks on all the right tick boxes, because it looks beautiful, great production value, lots and lots of replayability. You can even play with a more chaotic or more balanced way, or even team mode, but it's essentially one game that it's going to hit my table very, very frequently, because first of all I like abstract strategy games like many of us, and it looks gorgeous. So there you have it. This is a keeper for me. This is Baron Voodoo, a brand new game from Lucky Duck Games. Check it out.